Okay, so we're diving into the Protestant Reformation today, but not the usual Martin Luther story. We're going beyond that. We're
Right.
going to look at the women
Yeah,
who were involved and really helped shape this period.
absolutely.
And so today we're going to be talking about three extraordinary women:
Okay.
Katharina von Bora,
Mm-hmm.
Marguerite d'Angoulême, and Jeanne d'Albret.
That sounds great. It's interesting because, we think of the Reformation and we tend to think of it very much as a male-dominated space
Yeah.
full of men arguing about theology.
Right.
But when you actually start to dig a little deeper,
Yeah.
you discover that women are playing absolutely pivotal roles
Uh-huh.
in all sorts of ways.
And all over Europe, too.
Yeah,
Not just in Germany.
yeah, absolutely.
So,
I think it's going to be really exciting to kind of dig into these lives and see how they fit into the bigger picture.
yeah, definitely. It's like we're looking at a familiar painting, but suddenly noticing all these details we never saw before.
Exactly. And that's what's so fascinating about these women is that their lives weren't just sort of footnotes to the Reformation. They
Yeah.
were completely interwoven with it.
Yeah.
So, we're talking daring escapes,
Yeah.
fierce defiance, unwavering faith,
Right.
all against this backdrop of just massive upheaval.
Yeah, I think Game of Thrones,
Yeah.
but
right?
with theological debates.
Exactly.
Um,
And what I think is really fascinating is, despite all of the limitations that were placed on women at this time,
right.
they actually use their positions in really clever ways
Yeah.
to champion their beliefs and make a real lasting impact.
Ah.
So it really makes you reconsider, I think, the kind of traditional narrative that we've been given about this period.
Absolutely. So let's start with Katharina von Bora.
Okay.
Now, most people know her as Martin Luther's wife,
Right.
but her story is so much more than that.
It really is.
She actually escaped a convent
She did.
by hiding in a fish barrel.
I mean, how much more dramatic can you get?
Right. It's amazing.
Yeah.
So this was in 1523.
Mm-hmm.
She and 11 other nuns
Wow.
decided they had enough
Yeah.
of the restrictive life in the convent,
Right.
and they were inspired by Luther's teachings.
Uh-huh.
And so they actually sought his help
Wow.
in forging a new path.
That's pretty remarkable, isn't it?
It is.
I mean, this act of defiance
Yeah.
really highlights, I think, a key aspect of the Reformation.
Okay.
This questioning of long-held authority,
Mm-hmm.
not just in matters of faith, but in societal structures as well.
Right.
So Katharina's escape wasn't just about, her personal freedom. It was really the symbolic break
Yeah.
from the constraints imposed by the Catholic Church.
And she was not going to settle for just any life after that.
No, she wasn't.
She boldly declared that she would only marry either Luther
Oh, well,
himself
right.
or another prominent reformer, Nicholas von Amsdorf.
that is a statement.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, especially at a time when women's choices were so limited. So she's essentially demanding agency in her own life
Yeah,
and challenging the very notion of women's roles in society.
exactly.
So Luther eventually agreed.
He did.
And you can imagine the scandal that ensued.
Oh, I can only imagine.
I mean, marrying a former nun
Right.
was a direct challenge to the church's doctrine of celibacy for the clergy,
Yeah,
and it fueled accusations of hypocrisy.
of course. So
I mean, their marriage was a lightning rod.
it was.
Really, I
Yeah.
think it forced people to confront these inconsistencies
Mhm.
within the church's practices
Uh-huh.
and the changing role of women
Right.
in this society that was just going through a complete revolution.
Yeah, both religious and social.
Absolutely.
But Katharina was far from passive in all of this.
No, she wasn't.
She was a force of nature.
Yeah.
She transformed Luther's home, the Black Cloister, into this bustling center of activity.
Wow.
So think part family home,
Okay.
part intellectual salon,
Right.
part business venture.
I mean, she managed the finances.
Wow.
She ran a farm and brewery,
She was busy.
hosted scholars and students.
So she was basically the CEO of the Reformation.
I mean, she was
Yeah.
amazing.
And, I think Katharina's role is often really downplayed,
Yeah.
but her business acumen was vital to Luther's success.
Right.
I mean, she provided the stability and the structure
Yeah.
that allowed him to really focus on his theological writings and spreading his ideas.
Right.
And I think in doing so, she created this model for other clergymen's wives,
Okay.
demonstrating that marriage could actually be a partnership,
Yeah.
with women playing a very active role in supporting the movement.
Right. So it's like the ultimate power couple.
Yeah.
But instead of Hollywood, They're changing the face of religion.
Exactly.
Her story really highlights how the Reformation wasn't just about these theological debates,
Right.
but it was about societal shifts, gender roles, and the individual's right to choose their own path.
I think that's a really good point.
Yeah.
And I think it's something that we'll see again and again as we look at these other women.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we'll be right back after a short break.
Sounds good.
Okay, so Katharina's story was in Germany, but the Reformation was sweeping across Europe.
Yeah.
So now we're going to France.
Okay.
To meet Marguerite d'Angoulême.
Sounds good.
Now, she was a Renaissance princess.
Right.
Sister to the king.
Yeah.
No less.
That's impressive.
But she was so much more than just a royal figurehead.
She really was. I mean, imagine having Leonardo da Vinci
Wow.
as a guest in your home.
That's incredible.
That was Marguerite's reality.
Right.
She was a patron of the arts,
Uh-huh.
scholar in her own right,
Yeah.
and her court became this hub for humanist thinkers and reformers,
Okay.
some of whom were considered heretics at the time.
Wow. So it's almost like she created this safe space,
Yes.
this intellectual incubator,
Exactly.
where ideas could be debated and disseminated,
Yeah.
even those that challenge the authority of the church.
Absolutely. And I think it's important to understand that humanism, with its focus on human potential and reason, it really laid the groundwork for a lot of the ideas that fueled the Reformation.
Right.
So Marguerite's support for these humanist thinkers was subtly but significantly contributing to this growing wave of dissent against the church.
Yeah. And she wasn't just a passive observer.
No, she was very active.
She was deeply committed to making the Bible accessible to everyone.
Okay.
She even advocated for its translation into French,
Oh, wow.
which was a radical idea at the time.
Yeah. I mean, considering the church's control over scripture,
Right.
that was huge.
Was.
Yeah.
So she was basically saying, hey, everyone should have access to the Word of God, not just the elite.
Right.
And this, of course, put her at odds with the church,
It did.
who was determined to maintain its authority.
Yeah.
Marguerite even went so far as to shelter reformers who were being persecuted,
Wow.
risking her own position and safety to protect them.
That's incredible.
It is.
I mean, that act of courage really speaks volumes about her commitment to religious freedom and her willingness to challenge the status quo, even when it meant defying the most powerful institution in Europe.
Yeah, and she was instrumental in providing a haven for these reformers, allowing them to continue their work and spread their ideas, which ultimately helped the Reformation take root in France.
It did.
So it's amazing how one woman, through her patronage and protection, could have such a ripple effect on history.
Right.
But the story doesn't end there.
No, it doesn't.
Marguerite's daughter, Jeanne d'Albret,
Okay.
inherited her mother's independent spirit and took it to a whole new level.
It's true. I mean, Jean's life was just this whirlwind of political intrigue and religious fervor.
Yeah, she was forced into a marriage as a child.
She was.
And protested so vehemently that she had to be carried to the altar.
Oh, my goodness.
I mean, what a stark image of her unyielding spirit.
It is, isn't it?
Even at a young age.
Yeah, it kind of gives you a glimpse into her character.
Right.
And her fierce determination to control her own destiny.
And she certainly wasn't going to let a forced marriage define her.
No, she wasn't.
She challenged it for years.
Wow.
Eventually securing an annulment.
Good for her.
Which was a bold move considering the power dynamics at play.
It really was. I mean, this was not just a personal victory.
Okay.
It was a very public statement.
Okay.
You know, a challenge to the patriarchal structures that sought to control women's lives.
Right. So she refused to be a pawn in the political games of men.
Yeah.
And her actions emboldened others
They did.
to question these traditional roles assigned to women.
Absolutely.
And then, of course, she became Queen of Navarre.
Right.
And embraced Calvinism,
She did.
making the official religion of her kingdom.
Now, that was a huge statement,
It was.
especially considering the rising tensions between Catholics and Protestants throughout Europe.
Right, so she's not just dealing with these internal religious debates.
No.
She's navigating the treacherous waters of international politics and religious wars.
Exactly.
Yeah, Jeanne became a key figure in the French wars of religion.
She did.
A skilled diplomat.
Yeah.
And a fierce advocate for the Huguenot cause.
It's amazing how she managed to do all of that.
It is.
You know, in a time when women were so often relegated to the sidelines.
Right. This was a time of brutal conflict where religious differences were used to justify violence and persecution.
Absolutely.
And amidst all of this chaos, Jean had to balance her role as a queen, leading her people through these turbulent times.
Right.
With her role as a mother, her son Henri of Navarre, future king of France, was caught in the crossfire.
Yeah.
Even held captive at a young age.
Oh, my goodness.
So it's a testament to her strength and resilience.
It really is.
That she managed to navigate these challenges.
Yeah.
Holding on to her faith and her principles, even when her own life and the lives of her children were at stake.
You know, it really makes you think about the weight of responsibility she must have carried.
Yeah. I mean, it's incredible to think about the pressure she must have faced.
Oh, absolutely.
To just abandon her faith would have been the easy way out.
Right.
But Jean refused to compromise, even when threatened with excommunication and imprisonment.
Yeah. I think that's the remarkable thing about all of these women we've talked about. It's their unwavering conviction.
Right.
You know, they weren't just reacting to the events of the Reformation. They were actively shaping them.
Yeah.
They understood the power of their positions, and they used it to champion their beliefs.
Right.
Even when it meant challenging the most powerful forces in Europe.
Yeah, it really makes you wonder, how often are women's contributions to history overlooked?
All the time.
Or minimized?
Absolutely.
We tend to focus on, the big names, the Martin Luthers of the world.
Right.
But it's clear that women were instrumental in driving change during this period.
They were, I mean, and what's so striking is the diversity of their experiences.
Yeah.
You know, Katharina, the reformer's wife, using her business acumen to support the movement.
Right.
Marguerite, the royal patron, creating a space for intellectual and religious debate. And Jane, the queen, wielding political power to advance the cause of religious freedom.
Right.
They each represent a different facet of the Reformation, showcasing the multifaceted roles that women played.
It's like we've been looking at a tapestry, but only with half the threads visible.
Exactly.
So by uncovering the stories of these women, we're finally seeing the full picture.
The full picture.
The intricate web of influences and actions that shape this pivotal period in history.
And it's not just about, filling in the historical gaps. I think it's also about understanding the lasting impact of these women's lives.
Yeah, and their stories resonate with so many contemporary issues.
They do.
The struggle for gender equality, the fight for religious freedom, the importance of individual agency. In the face of societal pressures.
Absolutely.
It's amazing how these stories from centuries ago can still feel so relevant today.
It is, isn't it?
I mean, their courage,
their
resilience, their unwavering commitment to their beliefs.
Right.
These are qualities that transcend time and place.
I think so.
And they inspire us to stand up for what we believe in, even when it's difficult.
Exactly.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the lives of Katharina of Ambora, Marguerite d'Angoulême, and Jeanne d'Albret, what's the one thing you hope our listeners take away from their stories?
I think the most important takeaway is that history is not just this collection of names and dates.
Right.
It's really a tapestry woven with the lives of countless individuals. And often it's the stories of those individuals who dared to challenge the norms, who fought for their beliefs, and who ultimately left their mark on the world that resonate most deeply with us.
That's a great point.
These women's lives remind us that even amidst great upheaval, the human spirit can shine through.
It can.
And that even one person can make a difference.
That's right.
And that's a lesson that's always worth remembering.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into the Protestant Reformation.
It was my pleasure.
And for shedding light on these extraordinary women.
Happy to do it.
Who helped shape this pivotal period in history.
Absolutely.
We'll see you next time for another deep dive into the past.